may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, that was everything that we were waiting for, yet we had some pretty bad landing spots. You can't deny the fact that round one was filled with just disgusting landing spots for a lot of these top prospects, guys that we were excited about, but there is a list of guys that did see a bump in value. Some guys that definitely, even if they weren't rookies, came away as winners from round one of the NFL draft. So that's what we're going to be going through. We are going to be identifying those players. I'm going to be explaining why I think they should be rising and exactly how far they should be rising. But because I'm recording this extremely late, because I'm going to be staying up all night editing this, please guys, go down there, drop a like, show some support. And also, what I'm going to be doing all night is I'm going to be staring at our rookie rankings over on Patreon, and I'm going to be trying to not finalize those, but get a good update going. That way we can make small updates throughout the course of the entire draft. That way at the end of the draft, we can feel extremely confident with where we stand on those rookie rankings over on Patreon. So if you're already supporting the channel over there, just be on the lookout for those, because by the time this video is up, there's maybe already an update made. But yeah, that's it. Let's dive into this. And our first player we are going to be talking about was the most exciting pick of the entire NFL draft. After this happened, I thought we were going to have a good night. Trey Lance to the San Francisco 49ers. Okay, so here with Trey Lance, there are a lot of things to talk about. Let's talk about his own fantasy football value. And if we were going to be looking through it as a lens of 2021, I mean, yes, you could make the argument that Jimmy Garoppolo is most likely going to start the year as the starting quarterback for the 49ers. But once Trey Lance takes over, I am viewing Trey Lance as Jalen Hurts, except better in every single way. Of course, we've all heard Trey Lance has had so many touchdowns in college with no interceptions. We don't need to talk about the exact stats that I'm sure you've heard over and over and over again. If we're going to talk about any stats, I want to talk about the fact that he had 1,100 rushing yards in 16 games that he started. Now, that shows us that he has elite rushing upside, especially when we consider the fact that we know in college, sacks actually count as negative rushing yards for these quarterbacks. So at the NFL level, that would probably be counted a little bit more favorably for Trey Lance. So that's going to be something I want to point out. And now the reason we're calling Trey Lance a massive winner is not only did he go ahead of Mac Jones, not only did he go ahead of Justin Fields, but he finds himself in the best situation we have ever seen for a top 5 drafted overall quarterback selection. Now, if we are looking at Trey Lance, he's going to a situation that does not only have a fantastic offensive line. I think we can all sit here and agree that the 49ers, especially with some of the additions that they've made this offseason, have had one of the best offensive lines over the past few years, especially with the Kyle Shanahan system. And with the additions, it should continue to be a far above average line in 2021. Now we go through and we look at his skill positional guys, and an extension of that line, you have George Kittle, in my opinion, the best tight end in the entire NFL. Then you also have some great wide receivers in both Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. But more importantly, you have Kyle Shanahan, one of the best coaches in the entire NFL. So if you notice a trend, we keep on saying the best, the best, the best, the best. Now you throw in a quarterback that has elite rushing upside into that situation. And I think day one, Trey Lance is going to be a quarterback one for fantasy. So regardless if you're talking Dynasty Superflex, regardless of if you're talking about 2021 redraft fantasy football, Trey Lance is someone you need to be bringing up, because Trey Lance is going to be a great asset. Now, literally, guys, imagine Jalen Hurts, what he was providing you in that very small stretch in 2020. That type of fantasy production dumped in to a much better situation every way possible. Guys, Trey Lance, at this point, if we're talking Dynasty fantasy football, I'm going to have to sit here, and one of the hardest decisions I'm going to have to make tonight is, do we rank Trey Lance or Trevor Lawrence at that one spot? Because this situation is way too hard to pass up on. I mean, you have to sit here and you really have to look at it and just understand how many fantasy points it's going to bring for Trey Lance. Okay, so now let's go to another rushing quarterback. This guy we're going to keep very brief. It's going to be Lamar Jackson. Okay, so here with Jackson, we have to bring up the fact that they draft Rashad Bateman. They finally get Lamar Jackson, his wide receiver 1. And I really like the Bateman fit if we were talking about a real NFL situation. Now, Bateman at his own fantasy value, obviously you don't like to see him going to a situation where there's not going to be a ton of passing volume. So for Bateman, Baltimore is not great. But for Lamar Jackson, it's fantastic that he's getting Rashad Bateman in there because now you have your receiving option at tight end with Mark Andrews. You have your wide receiver stretching the field in Hollywood Brown, and you have Rashad Bateman to be your alpha X wide receiver. And I know that with Lamar Jackson, you're not expecting the majority of the production to come through the air. You're drafting him, you're valuing him highly because what he can provide on the ground. But even with adding another wide receiver to the offense, just teams are going to have to give a little bit more respect to the Baltimore Ravens, especially downfield. So maybe Lamar Jackson can see a small bump up with his rushing production if you just have the overall efficiency of the offense going up, if you have more trips to the red zone, if you have more drives sustained for the Baltimore Ravens, that equals more fantasy points for Lamar Jackson. Okay, so now let's get to our next winners, and I know they are just kind of small winners, but I want to point them out. We're going to be talking about both DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault. So yeah, y'all know I was a little bit worried about a running back going to Jacksonville. Not in round 1, though. In round 1, I was not worried about that. I was actually worried about them deciding to take a Rashad Bateman, deciding to take a Terrace Marshall with their late round 1 pick. And I know a lot of people were going, but Mason, DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault, they're great wide receivers. And I was saying, yeah, that's true. But this coaching staff, this front office has no allegiance to them. They're not their guys. And I was saying the same thing about James Robinson. It looks like they go running back instead of wide receiver. So now that both DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault get the quarterback upgrade, which we always expected, that's not going to increase their value. But what does increase their value is now they dodge the last bullet we wanted to see, because I was worried that this team was going to give the bag to a Chris Godwin, a Will Fuller, a Juju Smith-Schuster, a Kenny Golladay, one of those free agent wide receivers. Then both DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault, they avoided that landmine. Now we get to the NFL draft, and through round 1, they avoid all wide receivers in this situation. So it looks like DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault, you can't ignore the fact that they are rising in their projected target share for this upcoming season. All right, so now let's get to one of our favorite running backs. Let's go over to DAndre Swift, getting the best offensive lineman in the entire NFL draft out of Oregon. Now, not many people had him falling all the way down to number 7. And I want to point out the fact that if we're talking dynasty, I mean, the Detroit Lions are rebuilding in the correct way. I mean, clearly they are just blowing it up by trading away Matthew Stafford. And what you are wanting to do when you go full rebuild in the NFL, we saw this blueprint by the Cleveland Browns back with Sashi. You go offensive and defensive line first, then you build from there. You get your line dressed, then you can go to your wide receivers. Lastly, you get your quarterback. That way you have your quarterback on his rookie contract when all the pieces are in place to succeed, similar to what the 49ers have set up in San Francisco. And then that's when you can make your run, because you're not paying your quarterback $40-50 million a year. You can use those resources, spread them out all across your roster. So now you're seeing the Detroit Lions go that route by investing into their offensive line. This clearly helps DAndre Swift. DAndre Swift going to be their 3-down running back in 2021. I don't care about Jamal Williams. Swift is going to be getting the targets. Swift is going to be getting the touches at the goal line, and that's what matters. Okay, so now let's go to our next quarterback, which is going to be Jalen Hurts. So here with Jalen Hurts, of course he has to rise. Okay, not only did Jalen Hurts add Devontae Smith, one of the top wide receivers in the entire NFL draft with that 10th overall selection, but this team traded up to get Devontae Smith. And more importantly, Justin Fields was still available on the board, and they decided to pass on Justin Fields to take that wide receiver. So they showed us that they had the opportunity to bring in competition for Jalen Hurts. Yet instead of doing so, what they did is they go, hey, Jalen Hurts, we're going to give you every chance to succeed in Philadelphia. We want you to be our starting quarterback. And very similar to what we said with Lamar Jackson, you're not valuing Jalen Hurts because he's some elite passing quarterback. He's not a Patrick Mahomes. But what he can do is he can rack up a ton of fantasy points just on the ground. And clearly this overall offense, they needed a wide receiver 1. They weren't going to be getting it done with Jalen Reagor. I don't care what you think about Jalen Reagor. I don't care what you think about his top end speed. But no, they needed that wide receiver one. They get Devontae Smith. Jalen Hurts now, I think we look at him and we go, you know what? To be real here, Jalen Hurts has the ceiling to be a top 3 quarterback in fantasy. And I know that sounds crazy, but very few quarterbacks have it in their range of outcomes to go out there and give you 75 rushing yards any given game. And if you have that quarterback that just say can rush for over 1,000 yards in a season, and I know that's a very high mark. We probably shouldn't even be bringing that up with Jalen Hurts. We probably shouldn't be bringing that up with any quarterback. But say Jalen Hurts goes out there and he averages 50 rushing yards a game, which is an insane mark. This is elite. This is an outlier season, but we're talking about pure upside here. Then that translates over to 800 rushing yards throughout the course of the entire season. Now, if we go and we look at what 800 rushing yards equals fantasy football wise, that is 80 fantasy football points. Okay, so 80 points there. If you're trying to figure out how many points that is with passing touchdowns, if you want 80 fantasy points, you are going to end up having to throw 20 passing touchdowns. So if Jalen Hurts can add 20 passing touchdowns on the ground in fantasy, and he gives you just whatever he has in the air, I mean, it's simple. Jalen Hurts has the upside to be a top 3 quarterback in fantasy. Now they're investing into him. So Jalen Hurts, go out there, and it's going to be a little bit harder to trade for him now. It's going to be a little bit harder to draft him now, but it's something I would look to do. Now, the last thing we are going to talk about is something we got wrong. I said no running backs were going to be drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. And we were so wrong. You had 2 of them going off the board, and you had one of them going to the situation where he was always mocked to, Najee Harris going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I know I didn't expect this to happen. I know that I said it wasn't going to happen, but still, you look at it, you go, okay, great. Najee Harris now in a situation where we know he's going to be a workhorse running back. And what I've said with Najee Harris before is, yeah, he looks very similar to David Montgomery. And I hate bringing it up because I know people hear that and they go, Mason, how dare you? He's the running back 1 in the class. The running back 1 in the class should be compared to Saquon Barkley. He should be compared to Jonathan Taylor. Why are you bringing up David Montgomery? And it's simply because Najee Harris, big-bodied running back, looks like a 3-down workhorse. And I will say Najee Harris, definitely a better receiving running back than David Montgomery. So just imagine you put David Montgomery in a better situation in Pittsburgh. You make him a better receiving running back out of the backfield. What are you expecting in fantasy? Because David Montgomery is already a mid running back too. Then you drop him in a better situation. You give him the receiving upside. Then I think you're looking at a low end running back 1 with Najee Harris based on the overall volume that he should have, combined with the fact that you are going to be expecting the receiving production to be there as well. So yeah, Najee Harris, I think that you easily have to say he is going to be a fringe running back 1 now that he finds himself in the best landing spot possible. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all enjoyed round 1 of the NFL draft. I know we did not live stream. It's because we were over on the Dynasty Fantasy Football channel, and I was live streaming after every single significant selection. I am going to be doing something for the other rounds of the NFL draft. I don't know exactly what we are going to be doing, though. It's either going to be on this channel or the Dynasty channel. I'm sure that the majority of y'all are already subscribed to both. But yeah, that's it. Over on Patreon, you can find our updated rookie rankings. And yeah, I will see y'all with the video tomorrow. I want to give a big thank you for everyone joining the flock. Devin Strom, Alejandro, Mark, Jared, Caleb, and IV of Lean, Randotron, Micah, Larry, and Tyler.